Button. All right, all right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is where you are calling from. Happy to be here with you all. Starting to see that number increase, which is always exciting. Welcome to this month's collaborative mentoring webinar series, The Power of Mentoring in Community Sustaining Grassroots Mentoring Programs. As we're giving folks a couple minutes to join in and get settled, feel free to drop your name, where you're calling in from in the chat, and then our question of the day, which is, what was your favorite childhood activity? So again, as you're settling in, drop in name, where you're calling in from, and what was your favorite childhood activity. And just a reminder, make sure to click the 3 dots in the chat box to make sure that everybody can see your message and not just us. So we'll give folks another minute or so to get settled on in. If you need inspiration, my favorite childhood activity was making box forts. I would make really elaborate box forts with like multiple rooms. All the rooms had different purposes. They were very complex, very impressive for a 10-year-old. All right, here we go. Seeing people dropping things in. Oh, perfect. So for folks who are just joining, welcome to today's webinar, The Power of Mentoring and Community Sustaining Grassroots Mentoring Programs. We're just giving folks a second or so to get settled and join in. But in the meantime, you can let us know a little bit about yourself by dropping your name, where you're calling in from, and then what was your favorite childhood activity in the chat. Let me start reading some of these while we're taking a minute. So I see, okay, we got Andrea from Arizona making mud pies in the desert. I love it. Jeanette, hey, Jeanette, nice to see you from Baltimore, roller skating. All right. Let's see, PJ, electric scooter all over your neighborhood. We got Legos, rope swings. I love it. Swimming, being in nature, camping, lots of outdoorsy people. I love to see that. I also am a fan of the outdoors and hiking, nature, all that. Rope swings, jumping on the trampoline. Ah, Leah, that's such a good one. Ice cream truck moments. Very nice. Hopscotch is a classic. Awesome. Thanks all. So for folks who are just joining in now, we'll probably give it another 30 seconds or so before we get started. But in the meantime, you can drop your name, where you're calling in from, and in the chat, along with what your favorite childhood activity was. Thank you all for being here on this Thursday afternoon, few days right before autumn starts. I'm personally very excited. I know some people are dreading the end of summer, but I'm ready for it. I'm ready for fall. We got baseball. We got hide and seek. That's also a really great one. Video games from Cindy. All right. Awesome. So we can get started. Again, if you're joining, thank you for being here for part 3 of our Grassroots Mentoring Program series. We've had 2 other webinars in this topic this year. They're both on our website, so feel free to check those out. This will be the final part for now, but we might bring it back next year, so stay tuned for updates on 2025 CMWS plans. My name is Jake Sullivan. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the training delivery manager with Mentor National, and we'll get started. Again, continue to use the chat. Let us know who you are, what you like, where you're coming from. For tips to engage with us today, obviously you've all been using the chat already, which is great, so continue to do that. Talk with one another, share resources. Throughout the presentation today, our presenters will have some questions for you all to respond to in terms of how some of this work and how you're doing some of these things as well. Then we have the Q&A box, which should also be in your toolbar. So please put any questions that you have for the presenters there so that they're all in one place. And then at the end, when we have time for an audience Q&A, all of those questions will be organized there. You can also, I believe, upvote the questions that you'd like to see answered there as well, if there's one that you really want to make sure that we get to. If you haven't already enabled captions, you can do so by clicking the CC at the also on the toolbar. And then just a reminder that this webinar is recorded and we'll send it out in about a week with the slides, and it'll also be posted to our website at that point as well. We do have a couple polls to get to know you all a little bit more. Let me start sharing those. So the first one is one of our typical polls. It's just kind of asking, what is your role in the mentoring field? So you should see a poll that pops up on the screen asking what best described your role in the mentoring field. Something I always say with this one is that a lot of us wear many hats doing this work, especially in grassroots work. So just pick whichever one you're feeling like today, whichever one resonates with you in this moment. Another 10 seconds or so before we close that out. It's fun for me on the back end. We were just talking. I'm seeing all these little updates that Zoom is making. We can now put a QR code for these polls. I don't know if you can see that, but on my end, we can do that. Maybe I'll think about that for next time. Zoom's always on the cutting edge of technology. It's great to see. Awesome. Thank you all for answering that. Ending the poll in a second. I see a couple last people getting their answers in. All right, we'll cut it off there. So I'll share the results now. So you all should be able to see that. Looks like most of us are mentoring program staff or practitioners, but we do have an assortment of other folks in the room, educators, funders, mentors as well, national or affiliate organization staff. And then if you put other, I'm always curious, if you were one of those 12 people who put other, feel free to drop what your role is in the chat as well, so we get to know you a little bit more that way. So I'll stop sharing that one. And then we have one more poll, and this one now is about security offer. Oh, perfect. Security offer, or what am I saying? Your journey. This next poll is about your journey. So I'll launch that one. That'll pop up on the screen. And this is just asking where you're at in your journey. How long have you been involved in the mentoring field? This one obviously has no right or wrong answer. There's no shame wherever you're at. All of your perspectives and all of your experiences are welcomed here. So another 15 seconds or so. Make sure to get your answers in these last 5 seconds. All right, I'll close it out. Thank you all for answering that. Share this poll. Again, it's interesting. We have a pretty even spread. A lot of us are, I would say, what is that? About 38% are within 6 months to 3 years. Very happy to see that people who have been in this work for over 10 years are here. Please share your experiences, your ideas, your expertise. That's a really amazing milestone to have reached. And then also love to see that for some folks, this webinar is the first step or one of the first steps that you're taking. I remember when I started my mentoring journey about 6-7 years ago, I would attend these webinars as someone starting their own program. So definitely with you there. All right, so I'll stop sharing that. And now move on to the agenda for today. So we have almost gotten into welcome and introductions. I've just done the polls. As a reminder, we did 2 more webinars on grassroots mentoring before this. The first one was really focused on designing your program, things like logic models, theory of change, stuff like that. The second one was more so on volunteer management. There was some stuff around board management as well, and making a board, putting together a board. There was some light stuff on funding and also some other like administrative institutional knowledge tips and tricks. And then this one will be really focusing in on community partnerships, program quality, staff and volunteer retention, and recruitment in this conversation today. Then, of course, at the end, we have time for audience Q&A. We have a bunch of resources and next steps to share with you all as well before getting into our closing. So I'm very excited to pass it over to the person who organized this whole webinar from one of our amazing affiliates, Mentor Independence Region, Adelaide Meschler. I'll pass it over to you.
Hey everyone, thank you, Jake. Yeah, I'm Adelaide. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a trainer at Mentor Independence Region in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So those of you joining locally, I saw lots of you in the chat. We are your friendly mentor affiliate here locally in Eastern Pennsylvania. So I have been designing and facilitating trainings for mentors and mentoring programs for over 10 years. I've been in the nonprofit social services field for a couple decades. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. And though I've been living in Philly with my family for quite some time, almost 20 years now, I was born and raised in the South. And then, Jake, am I going to introduce our panelists?
Yes.
Okay,
So
great.
they'll introduce themselves. Let me
Yes,
go on to the next slide. So now we
perfect.
have Shanice Smith, one of our next panelists, and I'll pass it over to you to share a little bit more about yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shanice Smith. I represent New Options, More Opportunities, aka NOMO. I'm their Chief Operations Officer. So a little bit about myself. I guess I was born and raised in the field of work in social work and social services and just, being a decent human being and helping others. My grandmother had an open house, so she always helped everyone. My mother kind of like reproduced that, and she's always worked in the field of human services. So just growing up always in this field, doing a lot of community work, even starting our own organizations when we were like 14 and 15. And now some of those organizations are still going on. So I always had a heart for young people. Coming out of college, I went to Millersville to study sociology and anthropology, again, understanding this world, who we are in it, and then just what's operating around us. And then from there, I went on to have jobs in business management. It was a little different. So, and then once I was able to finally get back to doing a lot more of the work, I found my calling. So I worked in a lot of the different schools doing behavioral therapy, working with special education. And then I was able to kind of connect with more groups like NOMO. And then from then on, we've just been doing a lot, impacting the community, launching sites, and then just providing a lot of services so that we can continue to help our young people.
That's amazing. We're super happy to have you here. And our next and last but not least panelist, Janine Spruill. I'll let you introduce yourself as well. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here and talk with everybody. I am Janine Spruill, West Philadelphia, born and raised. I am the founder and executive director of Little Filmmakers, and I've been, hey, Kelly, I've been doing the work of teaching young people film and media for probably 20 years. So if I graduated from Temple University in 1999, that is when I started mentoring kids and teaching them how to tell their stories through film and media. I was a kid that loved movies, and my favorite film as a kid was E.T. And I always tell people Steven Spielberg was part of the reason why I loved film and storytelling. And I think storytelling is super, super valuable. And I know there are a lot of people who do not get a chance to tell their story or feel like they're being seen. So one of the things I wanted to do was to ensure that young people had a chance to not just tell their stories, but get access to the resources they need, like cameras and some of the technical stuff, and also having access to the people, the mentors, to help foster their storytelling. So I started doing Little Filmmakers for free as a volunteer. It was just me, myself, and I, and my camera and my backpack and my SEPTA bus pass. And then that was back in 1999, and here we are, 2024. And I've served probably over 4,000 kids in the Philadelphia region. We have a beautiful 3,000 square foot facility in Roxborough that you all invite to come visit us. Yes, you are. And I started doing all of this stuff out of the trunk of my car. So wait a minute, not even the trunk of my car, out of my backpack, because I didn't have a car. So yeah, so I am just so excited to share everything that I have learned over the years as someone who had to learn what starting a nonprofit, what it means from being grassy rootsy, like super grassy rootsy. We'll talk more about that. Thank you.
So I love that. I love that phrase, grassy rootsy. Thank you so much for being here as well. And now I think I'll officially pass it over to Adelaide to kick us off with this amazing discussion. And we have some slides as well to follow that discussion.
Great. Thanks, Jake. Yes, Janine, I'm so glad you said grassy rootsy first, because I got it from you and I can't say grassroots anymore without saying grassy rootsy. So thank you for that. But essentially, Jake shared the most requested topics from previous webinar participants of this Grassroots series on building your program. And we took 4 of them and sort of built out some questions and some tips and a conversation we want to share with you all. So the 4 topics are building and maintaining community partnerships, ensuring the quality of your program, retaining staff and volunteers. We're also going to talk about addressing burnout there, and then recruiting youth staff and volunteers. So we're going to sort of saunter into each topic. I'm going to invite our panelists, Shanice and Janine, to share how they're doing each of these things, as well as some of their challenges and what they've learned in these areas. And I can tell from the chat already that y'all know this, but Shanice and Janine are highly respected grassroots nonprofit leaders in our community here in Philly, and I'm really excited to share their wisdom and experiences with all of you. So whether you are starting a grassroots mentoring program, you're running a grassroots mentoring program yourself, or you're just interested in the topics of community partnerships and quality and retaining people and recruiting them, I feel confident that you are all going to learn something from Shanice and Janine today. And for each of our 4 topics, I also want to invite you all in the chat to respond to a prompt that is going to be listed on each slide. So I want to hear about your experiences. I want to hear about your challenges and what you're learning in these areas as well. So when it comes to building and maintaining community partnerships, I'm first putting it out kind of to you all in the chat, our listeners and participants. How are you building community partnerships? How are you maintaining those relationships in your community? And as folks are thinking about that and those are flowing in, I also want to invite you, Shanice and Janine, to help our participants and listeners better understand like your stories and experiences in your context. I want you to tell us just a little bit about NOMO and Little Filmmakers. My 3 questions are, how many young people are you mentoring? How many staff and volunteers do you have on your team? And if you could just briefly describe your mentoring model. So Shanice, I'll start with you first, but if you just want to share briefly, like how many young people, how many staff, and then what's your model for mentoring?
So NOMO currently, our enrollment is at 343. This is between 3 different sites and then a multitude of programs. So we have a site in North Philadelphia, which is, it centers a lot around workforce development, case management, fashion design, sneaker restoration, and branding. And then we have our South Philadelphia site, which focuses a lot on our culinary arts program. We do a lot of guitar, keyboarding. So we have a lot of arts programs there as well. And then our West Philadelphia site is our housing program, our community resource center, and our youth program. So that has a lot of traction and enrollments as well. So between all 3 sites, again, it's 343 young people. We have a staff of 17 paid employees. We have a list of 6 paid contractors and 10 volunteer contractors or in-kind contractors, and we can talk about that a little bit more when we partner with other programs and they offer services, and we have those contractors to use at no monetary cost for us. And then we have a roster of about 15 volunteers who come in as some of them are consistent volunteers, meaning they can offer 2 to 3 days a week, or some of them are as events come up, and some of them are as specific programs come up. So that's kind of like our staff. And then with the, what was the last question? Sorry. Oh, just talking about our mentoring.
Yeah.
Our mentoring model. So mentoring happens a lot of ways at NOMO. It's organic, it's informal, it's formal. So in just talking a bit about our formal process of mentorship, we partner with NAMI, and that's the National Alliance for Mental Illness. So they have a great mentorship program where they vet a lot of their staff for different life experiences, different careers, and we evaluate young people to see who would be better aligned with this individual, who can get the best advice from this individual. So that actually happens at Fridays, where we're pairing people directly with mentors, but all of our staff are vetted and trained to be a mentor. So we don't force relationships, but we want our staff to be people that the kids are comfortable with coming up to. So our staff, all, whether they're case managers, they're executive assistants, if they're in our NOMO building, then they know how to engage with young people, because you, at any point, you can be the person that a child talks to. And that's organic. If they're comfortable with you, if they see something about you, you got to know how to handle them, how to handle their situation. And you got to also know how to report and how to talk to us and when to talk to us and when to keep their privacy. So we all kind of quote unquote work the floor at all of our locations. So we may have jobs and our respective duties, but our main focus when the young people are in our building is paying attention, being mindful, asking them questions. How was your day? Noticing when they're off, noticing when, they might not have the same energy walking through the door, because all of our young people greet us when we walk through the door, and we do a quick check-in right then and there. So we know from the beginning if something's going on. So that's kind of like our mentoring models. All of our staff are mentors because they all have case managers, but your case manager might not always be the person you're most comfortable with. And we respect that. We don't force them to tell their case manager anything, but our team communicates so that if there's something that the case manager should know about, she's still informed. But we make sure that whoever you are able to talk to, we're all prepared to handle any issues. And then if you want a specific designed mentor just for you, that's curated based on your interests and things that you might have going on or the careers that you want, then we'll align you with that. And we use some of our partnerships to do internship programs. So we've worked with different council members so that they can become mentors and they can receive some of our youth who are ready for those steps. So sorry.
Yeah, I love hearing about your program. It's so responsive to your young people's needs. It's so flexible and responsive to their actual needs. So I appreciate that. And then Janine, would you mind sharing for little filmmakers, again, just how many young people are, when you're talking about your experiences and stories, like how many young people are you talking about? How many staff and volunteers do you have? And then if you just want to describe briefly your sort of mentoring model. Thanks, Shanice.
Sure. So Little Filmmakers, we are a specialized nonprofit. So because we serve young people who are interested in the arts, they go through arts education, and then our organization is structured to not just teach, but put kids on a career path to like jobs. So you come in, you learn everything you need to know, you be in practice, you're aligned with a filmmaking mentor, you build your resume, your portfolio, and then we help you find a job and also do the professional development and the social emotional development for you to sustain and keep that job. On average, because we work with a population of kids who are interested in the arts, we serve between, I would say 150 and 300. And that's through our programs. That is also through any community events that we're doing. We do webinars and things of that nature. So we add those numbers as well. As far as our staff, again, I have a very core staff. So Little Filmmakers, we are not a large organization. We're more like mid. So I have 3 key staff members. I have 3 to 5 teaching artists, depending on the needs. And then we, on average, rotate 3 to 5 volunteers. As far as our mentorship, like the way we model it is we offer programs in schools and community centers across the city of Philadelphia, not just here in our facility. We have kids come to our building. We work with kids between the ages of, I'll say 8 to 24. Because we found over the years that the longer the kids are with us, the more of an impact we can have on them. So doing the 8-week program is not going to change little Timmy's life. So in order to really have an impact on these kids, we have to be invested in them. And that means time, right? And holding these kids accountable for the things that they want in life. So when we're looking for our mentors, we're really looking for folks who are doing it because they want to do it because they care about the young people in their community, and that they're not just looking for opportunities to get paid. So we have a really specific vetting process, because I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll tell you about how we do like our surveys and everything like that. But our model is pretty simple. If the kid has an interest in film, we've created programs to keep them invested in the organization. So the organization is able to grow with this kid. So I've had kids since the age of 10, and now they're 20, 21, 22, 28. It's crazy. But long-term relationships is really essential to the development of a young person. So similarly to NOMO, like we need to check in with these kids, because even though we got a program model, it may not fit the kid today. That kid may need something completely different, and we have to be in tune to that so we can make the adjustments that we need to make. There's a little bit about the population that we serve. Little Filmmakers is an organization that tries to find kids who are kind of in the margins, right? So these kids are probably at the poverty level. These are probably kids who are dealing with systemic injustices. These are kids who are probably going to schools that are underfunded. So we want to create a bridge for these young people, because kids in other counties, they got all of it. They just rocking and rolling. That's natural for them to be exposed to like high quality film cameras and careers and internships. But our kids that we focus on, these are kids that kind of get lost in the sauce, and they wonder why the kids are running up and down the street acting crazy sometimes. But if we are able to hone in on those specific kids, they have very specific needs. So that's why the social emotional learning is so key to our organization. Because just because you, as my grandma would say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. So if we bring the kids in and expose them to everything, we also have to do a lot of work on the internal of the kid. So that's how our mentorship model is designed. And we also bring in teaching artists who understands that and can better service our kids.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you both sharing a bit about your programs and the young people in your programs. Sometimes just that in and of itself can help those of us who are building programs or rebuilding programs kind of imagine what we want to do and think about what the young people in our community really need and get responsive to that. You talked about, Jeannie, your program being long-term and having something so specific, being able to go so deep. And it sounds like intentionally keeping it small so that you can maintain that depth of impact with those young people. And there's so much in the chat, I cannot keep up, but there is lots of love in the chat, but also there are some responses to that question, how folks are building and maintaining partnerships in their communities. And so I know y'all are doing really innovative and cool stuff out there. So please check out what your colleagues are doing in the chat. Okay, so that's really helpful. And then let's get in a little bit more specifically to the building and maintaining community partnerships. I think some of us might kind of assume that as a grassroots organization, you're both already embedded in your community. Community partnerships are just easy to build and maintain. Would you say you found that to be true, Janine and Shanice?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay.
Yeah,
Should we
no.
talk about challenges first then, maybe?
Yes, please.
Challenges.
So definitely. So one thing, especially with working with community organizations, your community members, and then even when we're getting onto business relationships and federal relationships, I think sometimes when you're thinking of a community partnership, you forget that it's people behind it. Like you think like, oh, I got to partner with this organization. You forget is no, I have to partner with this person. Like, so a lot of times we take the human aspect or we don't. Well, I know for me, I felt to realize just how human it was. Just because, like I said, I did business management kind of things. I knew I had a list of vendors, people who we supplied from. I didn't have to do too much of that. But now that I'm on like the other end of things and I'm building these relationships so that we have that list, it's totally different. So a lot of times one of the challenges is actually connecting with people there. You might email a business or something like that and say, hey, can we use this resource, or hey, we're looking for this, and might not ever get a response. But sometimes you got to go to the place or support the organization or connect with someone on a human level. Like when you meet them at a function, you actually have to send that message, follow up, have tea, have lunch, create a relationship with that person. So now they get to know who you are and they're understanding that they're working with you. So a lot of times partnerships and community and just all of this relationship building is really knowing the people behind the organization and connecting with them, and then just actually just maintaining those relationships. Like it's really work. It's like really having family or connecting with friends or just making sure you're checking in. Even with our partners who offer us resources and things, even though we have this continued relationship, we're always like having meetings and checking in with them, and we get to know them. So now I'm checking in on their kids. So that's something that helps me keep these relationships, because they're like, okay, they actually care about us. They don't just want our resources. We actually have a decent relationship with them. And then that helps because you might find yourself in a hole, a pit, or you might find yourself facing allegations, or anything can happen when you're an organization. But having those strong bonds and those relationships provide for you this kind of stronghold, and it allows you to be able to defend yourself even when you didn't know you were defending yourself. Is the relationships that you're building, and they have helped Nomo to really, really navigate and stay afloat and maneuver. And I know we'll get more into that, but just it wasn't easy understanding that. And now I'm learning, and now I'm really, really working on our partnerships. Like, that's a whole different department and area, and you really have to be dedicated to really dive into those partnerships, learn what they're about, learn what their motives are, learn who the people are that's implementing these partnerships and what their motives are behind why they did this initiative or why they did this program, because that really, really helps in maintaining that partnership and maintaining that strong relationship.
Yeah, it sounds like coming from the business world, you moved away from transactional to more like relationship building. Yeah, go ahead,
Yep.
Janine.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for all of that, Shanice. I say amen to all of that. I started doing Little Filmmakers really green. Like, I didn't know what a nonprofit was until someone said, you should make it a nonprofit. Because remember, I was just, graduating from Temple University, and I had a film camera. So a lot of this for me was very, very new. And all partnerships aren't created equal. And I think the biggest thing that I learned is that there has to be some kind of reciprocity. You just can't partner with anybody, because the question always comes up is, why is this partnership going to be valuable, and how is it going to be valuable to both people? Over the years, I learned that folks are out to do what they want to do and make what's best for them, and that's not the best the partnership possible. So there's been a couple of times that I've been promised certain partnerships or opportunities with certain folks, just to realize that they were just using us for something, or using my knowledge for something, and wanted to do something different. So I learned to take baby steps. It's kind of like dating. So it's like, we're going to do something really teeny weeny and see if that works. And if that goes well, then we're going to take it to the next level. And that takes time. It takes investment. It's like partnerships, it should be more like community relationships. As long as we value each other, we value the work that we do. There's some gaps in Little Filmmakers that I know this partner can fill, because there's some gaps in that partner Little Filmmakers can fill. When you have that balance, the only thing you can do is grow. For example, Little Filmmakers has done tons and tons and tons of programs with the Free Library of Philadelphia. And that partnership worked because they gave us a space to come in and teach the kids for free, right? And then the library was able to offer storytelling programs for free to the kids in their community. So it's always been like a respected relationship. But there's also been partnerships that didn't go too well. And then you learn those lessons. And then sometimes you got to set boundaries too. Don't be afraid to say no, thank you. Don't be afraid to end the partnership respectfully. But as long as your community partner respects the work that you're doing, and by they, I mean the staff, like to Shanice's point, you're dealing with people. And if the person is not interested in really being upfront and honest and transparent with you, then it may not be worth it. And then the date ends and I'm marrying somebody else. Thank you.
Yeah. And I wonder, I really appreciate how to me, when you talk about those baby steps, it sounds like building trust. Like, you're taking your time to build trust, which in like a two-way bi-directional reciprocal relationship. Do you, and you may not, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but do you have any examples of like red flags or green flags? Can you think of a time that like you were like, oh no, I know, or looking back, I should have, yeah.
Sure. I had a red flag earlier this summer. A potential partner reached out, hour-long conversations. They were thinking about bringing Little Filmmakers in to work with their kids at a particular school. And I was talking to this person prior to my vacation. So I was halfway in vacation. I was like, I don't care about none of this, but I'm going to entertain the conversation. But I realized some red flags, and this is because of past experience. All of a sudden, they're not answering my emails. I'm trying to follow up with you. they're asking for too much and not offering anything. What are some other things? They didn't have their own, I guess, organization or activities. Things didn't seem organized enough for me. Couldn't answer very key questions. It just feels like very like from the hip, like all over the place. There's no structure. So that told me that you're not organized, you're not serious. You may not be taking things serious on your end, because over there might be a complete mess. And the last thing I need to do is insert my organization, resources, and my teaching artists into a vortex of just chaos. So those are some of the red flags that came up for me.
Do you have an example of a green flag? Something that happened where you're like, oh yeah, no, this is going to be a good partner. Yeah.
A great example of a green flag is someone who's done their research on you. A great green flag is that they understand the value of the work that you're doing, and they can see where that value can be placed within the work that they're doing, but they can also offer something else. I love those conversations where they say, well, check out this fund. I think this would be a great fit for you. Or reach out to this person. I think they'll be great for helping you to manage this, problem that you're having. Because now we're slowly but surely building that trust. So if you want to see us successful, that's a green flag.
Yeah. And I don't have it on the slide here, but it really belongs here. I'm hearing the importance of building trust with community partners, like our fellow programs and people doing similar work in our communities, through transparency, even in a competitive environment. Like, we don't have to respond to an environment steeped in scarcity and competition by hoarding information and resources. We can actually create abundance for each other when we share that information, we share those resources. Which I think ultimately is creating more mentoring opportunities for young people in our communities. So I guess like one of those challenges is resisting that scarcity mindset and choosing to actually share resources with each other and trust others to share with us carefully with baby steps. Thank you for that. Shanice, I know you have shared with me times that your organization may have been struggling and didn't have money, and you were able to find free classes and then ended up building partnerships. Do you have an example of that you'd like to share or be willing to share?
Of course. So just because it happens. So like I said, in our organization being the 3 sites that it is, running multiple programs every day out the week, just because we like to our young people to have diverse options and a variety of choices and career options to choose from. So is also one thing that we like to do is, whether we're doing it with programs and people, is remain consistent and sustainable. So any partnerships or any things that we do, we want to know that we're at least making a year commitment with any partners. Like, hey, even if it's cohorts and things like that, we have to be able to repeat them. So sometimes when we're dealing with different grants, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you might have dealt with this, especially with nonprofits, the money doesn't always come when it should. Sometimes contracts have a start date, they get conformed 5 months after that start date, but you still have to build to that start date, which is crazy. I know it sounds, but that is literally how it is, especially sometimes when you're dealing with federal funds. But in order for you to build back to that start date, you have to show that you did those services. So you have to create these programs. You have to, and that's why I says bring it back to the personal, because you're calling on favors. You're asking people to either offer services for free, or can I back pay you? Like, can I owe you money for a few months while we wait on our grant? Can I show you something, or can I give you my word in good faith and you provide these services for my kids because they need them, and I can't afford to have that interruption in services? And then sometimes it's having plans A, B, and C, maybe in the back pocket, to see what can we do to make sure that we keep these core programs running. But a lot of things that we do is we have partnerships with and I'll name them because they're amazing organizations, but we have partnerships with like Rock to the Future, Beyond the Bars. We have partnerships with Expressive Illustrations. We have partnerships with DBH, IDS and their TTT programs. And that's a slew of other programs, including the Black Brain Campaign, Black Men Hill, Mothers in Charge, NAMI, and as well as EMIR. So that these are all programs that have dedicated, and we sign contracts and agreements with them where they're agreeing to offer these programs for us for free so that our kids are always being serviced. And then we're able to now have more, when funds do come in, we have more funds to do specialized programs with them. So now we can pay a decent instructor to come in and do aesthetics and teach them and get actual materials. And now we can actually pay and get full-fledged state-of-the-art kits for carpentry class. So now we have more because our programs and our partnerships are providing that core structure that we need. So no matter what, if funding comes into the program, if we're laxed on program, or not laxed on program, but if we're laxed on funds, our children are always being taken care of with the core programs that we promised them.
Yeah, and I know also, like you talked a lot about how generous other programs have been with you all. I know you all have also been very generous with other programs. Like you have 3 huge spaces. I know you've shared your space with folks. And do you have examples of times that you've been able to give back?
Yes. So, well, first and foremost, we always give back to our young people. So, we provide space for it's just safe haven space. So, even though it's adults in this space, we work for them. And you know, as long as they're remaining within the guidelines, this is something that they can use this space to do whatever they want. So, if we have young people with businesses, if we have young people who want to host town halls, who want to host their own dance teams, they can use our space for free. Like that is their space. So, as long as they're doing what they're supposed to, we help them however they need. So we've hosted youth day parties, we've hosted trunk parties, we've hosted birthday parties, we've hosted giveaways and everything. Whatever the child needs, we did prom send-offs so that they know that this is their space. But aside from that, I always got to mention our young people first. But we also do that with our partners. So all of the events, all of the partners that I just named, we also exchange space with them because they host, a lot of them are mobile programs. So they host all workshops in our sites for their other programs. They do training. Like I know Rock to the Future had 80 kids come from Work Ready, and they used NOMO for their training sites because we didn't need it during the day. And then we did our training in the late evening. So that's something that worked out for us. With Expressive Illustrations, they offered mental health groups for the entire community for the entire year, and we did that at NOMO. So we were able to also host those spaces, and because we're already a safe haven and a staple in the community, they're familiar and they're comfortable with coming to NOMO for these services. What else have we done? We also rent our space out to people who might be in a financial strait, and that's, they might not be affiliated with NOMO, but they just reached out to us for help. So we have families who is sad to say may have to bury their children. So we've donated our space so that they can have the repast, or so that we can help support them. So it's a lot of ways that we've been able to really, really let this space work for the community. Like even though we've gotten free programming, we're saving programs thousands of dollars in cost because they now have a space in a brick and mortar where they can hold their services and offer everything. Even in our community resources, our community resource center, we have 3 programs that operate out of there for free. They don't have to pay for rental or office space because we're allowing them to give those services to host their clients in our space as long as they provide the services for the community.
Yeah, I just hear like so much abundance, like overflowing abundance here when we share with each other, even in an environment that really is competitive. Like a lot of times we might be providing the same services to the same youth, or competing for the same financial resource, the same funding. Janine, you told me about I think a time, or maybe even just shared the idea of, even if you and a community partner are applying for the same funding, you both might earmark some funding to share with each other. You really shared that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything about that you want to share? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I think it goes back to like, who is an ideal community partner? Little filmmakers, again, we do something very, very specific. And some of our partners do the complete opposite. So there's a partner, Education for Educators, and they work with youth who are in the district attorney office here in Philadelphia, and they're what is that word when you want to get kids off the street? They're the program that redirects the kids who have been arrested for nonviolent crimes. So
Diversion.
Thank you. That's the word, diversion. Thank you, the diversion program. And He needed somewhere for his kids to not necessarily be, but he needed to bring in some services that allowed these kids to do some self-expression and things of that nature. And he and I were just in conversation. We both from, West Philly. So I'm like, well, what can little filmmakers do to support the work that he's doing? Because the work that they are doing is in direct alignment with the work that little filmmakers do. Because sometimes for us, it's not all about the money. So how do we make this work? He didn't have a huge budget because nobody wants to give us money, really. So what I did was I said, well, why don't we create a program that's going to run for a few months? And at the end of that, the kids will have some kind of self-expression, some videos that they wrote, they directed, they shot themselves. I bring a mentor in. I'll pay for the mentor, but if you can cover maybe some of the other stuff, then we can make this work. And that's exactly what happened. So that's what true partnership is all about. So if this organization had a need and I was able to fill it, and neither of us really had the capital, I was able to earmark a percentage of what it would cost to do this program. And I will cover this as long as he was able to cover something else. So we make it work, right? So if I try not to let not having money be an issue, because that's a scarcity mindset. And I grew up in West Philly, like we ain't had no money. So for me, I also had to adjust and think about what other resources are available. Because if there's no money here, what are the other opportunities elsewhere? The teaching instructor that we brought in, she didn't want a whole lot of money because she really wanted to work with these kids. So I was able to negotiate with her. I was able to get one of our volunteers to donate a bunch of snacks. So when the kids came, they had something to eat and I didn't have to pay for it. So those are some like really great examples of just like when you find a partner and there is a lot of challenges, especially with the population that you are serving, how do we work together to make it work? And that's one of like those great examples of us making it work. And at the end of the day, these kids did a phenomenal project where they got to interview a victim who had their car stolen. And it was the kids that wrote the questions, they shot it, they help with the editing, and they have a final product that's end up being circulated around the diversion program.
Wow, that is so cool. Full circle. And yeah, I feel like I could talk to y'all or listen to you all share about your stories of community partnership the entire webinar. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to ensuring program quality. Jake, if you don't mind going to the next slide here. Thank you so much, both of you, for the work you're doing and for sharing it with us so we can kind of reimagine how we're doing things. Ensuring program quality, I have a question for you all down at the bottom of the slide to share with each other in the chat and share with us. How are you doing this? How are you ensuring the quality of your program? Whether you have a small program, a big program, your program's in one area or multiple areas, what do you do to make sure it stays high quality as you grow and get bigger? Or maybe stay small. And I wanted to, I kind of pulled some things out on the slide here from my conversations with you, Shanice and Janine. And maybe starting with prevention. I know that's something, Shanice, that you shared that you all are doing to ensure program quality. You've shared with me how you've had staff that have left the organization, and then that personal relationship changes with youth. You've talked about different times of year and how certain times of year are hard and how you have done your best to prepare for them. I'm wondering if you have anything about prevention you'd be willing to share as it relates to ensuring program quality.
Yep. I would like to touch on a couple points regarding that. So first and foremost, in any program design that we have, we've all seen amazing program designs on paper, but if the wrong people are putting them into place, then it just doesn't work out. So one of the things first to ensure our overall program quality is vetting our staff. So we kind of have a rigorous protocol in vetting our staff down to volunteers and just the employees. whenever someone applies, whether they're referred and everything, the first thing we do is check the references, go over the resume, and then just kind of like look for, any patterns in their resumes, like how long are they at jobs, like are they always leaving in a year, like what are the relationships with these jobs. And then when you interviewing them, we have a 2-step interview process where you're interviewed first by the person who will oversee you directly, and then you're interviewed by a chief staff member. And in that interview, of course, we're just seeing how are they personably, like the typical interview cues and things like that. But then if you do pass that interview process, then you go to a week volunteering process where now you can get immersed in our environment, learn our ways, and see if we're a fit for you, as well as if you are actual fit for us in the actual environment. And then from there, our young people and our staff evaluate you. So we'll then talk to our staff and our young people like, hey, did you like such and such? Like, and then from there, that is how we try to invest and build on quality people who can make those relationships, can maintain those standards, and seem like they're able to work in this work environment the way things are currently operating. Because not every environment, it works for everybody. And sometimes you think that something is how it is, and you get there and it's different. So, we really work hard to ensure that we have quality staff. And that's why sometimes it is hard to replace people if they leave or if they find another opportunity, because our staff brings such key values and they're all different and they're all unique. And it's really hard to replace good people. But if you make the investment and you take the time and you continue the protocol and policy, then you will continue to get good quality people who can help to ensure that you're running a quality program. And that segues into my next point. Sorry.
I have a question about that first example you shared with your screening process. So it's kind of, I think, unique to have, you said there's a week where they're still in the interview process, but they come in and volunteer.
Yep.
Is that, and you're not paying them, it's volunteer.
Nope, volunteer.
Yeah. Do you ever get pushback from folks about that?
So actually, when I started No More, I had to volunteer for a month. And I'm still here. So, but we weren't getting enough people who can make that commitment. So it's already kind of hard with our hours. So we try to offer great benefit packages and and definitely competitive salaries. But we've had people who, they said they couldn't do the volunteer week. So we honestly couldn't work with them. And that's just the way it was. Just because if we can't see how you're going to work and treat our kids first, before we have to onboard you and then see, well, she actually ain't good with kids. And then we have to now we have to terminate you or something like that. We just want to see how you are in the we just want to see actually how you are in this space. Like, how is it organic? Do we feel, because we are a family oriented space, we're all we people who lead with our spirits and our vibes. And then sometimes we got to understand, if a person makes someone uncomfortable, that has to be valid. Whether they might have said something and everything, we have to understand how we're presenting ourselves to people. So that's very, very important. And then we've gotten pushback, but none of the people who are here with us had a problem with it. Like, our volunteers don't have a problem with it. We see people every day, like people who are executives at other organizations, and they make the time to volunteer with us. So if we know that you're prioritizing our kid, and there's a lot of people out there who are willing to prioritize our children too, and we don't want you to make any commitment that you can't make.
Yeah. Wow. And I know there's something else that Janine is doing that I wanted to take some time to highlight if we could. Janine, you've talked to me a lot about how you've had to learn to evaluate, and how you're doing some of that. Would you be willing to talk about how you're assessing your program, your young people's needs, as well as the program itself?
Yes. So one of the things that I had to learn to respect is the power of data. And it sounds so good, but it was so essential for me to understand that kids will tell you how they're feeling, but then we need to take that information and operationalize it or make it applicable to the program. So we've been developing programs for many, many, many years. But like I said before, if the kid comes in and they're not feeling it, then it's going to go downhill. So then how do you pivot? So what my staff and I started to do was, so kids who are in our after school programs, our community programs, we do a like a really quick survey. What is it that you want to learn? How do you learn best? We ask the questions as simple as possible. There's only a few questions. Then we take those answers and match it against how we built up the program. Then we make the adjustments, right? So we coming in with all this tech and all this other big stuff, and the kids are like, I just want to write. Like, oh, okay, we'll just go get some pencils. That type of information helps informs the need of the kids. With our young adults, so we have a really intensive internship program. And our goal, especially for our kids who are kids of color, Black kids, like if you want to do this as a career, we want you to be successful. So those surveys, and it's a Google form. It's not even like Survey Monkey or anything like that. Something simple, because the cool thing about a Google form, it does the analytics for you. It breaks everything down for you. Those kids are asked very like intentional questions. What is something that you're afraid of? You know, what is failure to you? You know, what do you need to feel like you're successful? And those kids answer those questions on their own. And then me and my staff and the mentors, we sit down with those kids and we go over those questions. And then we put together goals, milestones. How do you know? One thing I've learned over the years is the way to build a young person's confidence is to have them to do something they either feel like they couldn't do or they were afraid to do. That's how you build up their confidence, because now you went from here, now you're up here, because now you can see what you're made of. So those surveys, testimonials, feedback is key. Oh, I've had kids tell us like, this was cute, but you could have did it this way. And I was like, oh, okay. Next time we know that we run another program. But getting people's feedback, getting their opinion. You can't go in somebody's house and tell them how to rearrange the furniture because you think it works better this way. You have to go in and ask them, what is it that you need? You know, what is valuable to you in this moment? And where are you trying to go in the long run? And those surveys and asking questions and being intentional with understanding what they feel like they need will inform your program. And it also will sustain your quality.
And I actually added, like from my conversation with you all, I added to the slide here, small is all. The principle of emergent strategy really came to my mind, reflecting on the fact that this is from Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy book. I was reflecting on the fact that you are okay with being small. In the midst of so much cultural pressure to be bigger, do more, expand, scale your program, even from funders, by staying small, your programming is again able to be responsive to your community's needs, as opposed to a more fixed or prescriptive program model in which the goal of growing your program or your organization can become more important than the actual needs of the real young people in your community. And I know I just also want to highlight here, listening to young people, which you've both, I think, already talked about. But I know, Janine, you had shared a story with me about a young person in your program who was not doing well mentally, and how you were kind of able to help them build their toolbox. Do you remember?
Yeah. It's interesting because we work with artists, right? We work with kids who are creative. So they have a different level of sensitivity because they are absorbing the world, creating something, and then regurgitating it. And it could be a lot of work, just being that creative person. And then also, who am I out in this world and how are people receiving me? So there's a different level of pressure with artists, especially like once they're working on something and it's going out into the world. So they put a lot of pressure on themselves. And I realized that my one kid, really, really talented, has a lot to say, a huge story that she wants to tell. And she went into a bit of a depression because I think she got overwhelmed with expectations. She got overwhelmed with the work. And I think she was worried about the final product and what people thought of it. And in understanding like the mental health and capacity of some of our young people, me and my team put together like toolboxes. Like, what are the things you need to pull out of your toolbox when you're feeling depressed, right? What do you need? Like, I've been in therapy for over a decade, and my therapist is still like adding stuff to my toolbox. So I couldn't imagine what like a 17-year-old is going through who ain't been in therapy for 10 years, right? So I took some of what I learned in my own personal experience and said, well, how do we help a young person build their own toolbox? So it's not for me to build it. You have to build it. So it's also getting to know yourself. One of the things I realized when you're mentoring a young person, it takes a lot of work because you're pouring into that kid, but you also want to make sure that that kid is pouring into themselves. So a toolbox, and a toolbox could be like, oh, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I might need to go for a walk. I might need to drink some water. I might need to, play with Legos. That's what I do. I play with Legos. I might need to tell my friends no or what have you. So your toolbox is that thing that will keep you on your path because you're going to hit a wall. You know what I mean? But when you're dealing with young people, especially with our kids, I want them to get into a habit to self-identify when they might need to take a break, or they might need to ask for help, or they might need to sit in the room and be quiet, right? So those things helps our kids to better deal with those potential challenges, right? So, because there's only so much me and my staff can do. A lot of it is the internal thing that they need to do. So that's what the toolbox is for.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that specific example. Jake, let's move on to the next slide here. Our next topic here around retaining staff and volunteers is something folks asked for that we've already talked about, right? As it relates to ensuring program quality, like the people delivering and implementing those programs, making sure they're a good fit, having really some stringent screening processes, it sounds like. I also saw quite a few questions in the chat, Shanice, about your screening process. Someone also asked what kind of interview questions you ask. If you'd be willing to share a little bit about that. I want to make sure we have time also to share about addressing burnout and compassion fatigue, because y'all are doing some really cool stuff I want to share with folks. But Shanice, I'm wondering if we could go to you and would you be willing to share a little bit more about maybe like interview questions or the second interview?
Yep. So, during an interview, we ask typical basic background questions, like just about your work experience, transportation, just things like that. But so I am a very empathic person, and I'm also very like just a spirit vibes kind of person, just picking up on just their body language, what they're more eager to answer to, what they're passionate about. So I will say too, aside from having a guide of questions, I also go off of the conversation as well. And sometimes you can literally, I just in best practice, I try to make the interview conversational, so that they feel comfortable enough to talk about what's really going on, what's on their mind. A lot of times it's kind of like applying a counselor approach, so that you're understanding who are you really getting. So we might ask questions, just open-ended questions surrounding experiences. So in mentoring, so say we're talking about I'm getting a youth coordinator or a mentor and mentoring young people, can you explain a time where maybe you had to could reevaluate your own values and dealing with some of the youth? Can you talk about a situation and maybe you had to deal with something like that, or is asking a situation that was challenging when you dealt with a young person? How did you overcome that? How was it when you have you ever had to work in a hostile environment? Just seeing like how are they resilient in workplaces? How are they working with young people? And just having conversations where they're willing to share and overshare, because the more someone's talking to you, the more you're getting to learn more about them. A lot of times in our interviews, I've had people admit that they've stolen stuff. And like some of the questions that is like, all right, we're getting somewhere. Like I'm getting to know who you are. Like, because also with NOMO, we and I see a lot about the backgrounds and everything. So we do, when working with kids, we make sure they have all of their clearances, all of their backgrounds and their trainings and their certifications. But we also accept people with certain backgrounds. Like, of course, no arson or no felons, but we understand that we've all made mistakes, and it's those mistakes and those experiences that help us to better guide and mentor our young people. So just understanding what they're really going through in life. Some people will come out and tell is it exactly Jeanette, when you said when interviewing, don't be afraid to ask hard questions, like, because you'll have some people who come in, oh, I was late. Oh, well, what happened with being late? And then you found out that they're in a domestic abuse situation and that they actually can't really make it to work all the time. So it's like, I'm really sorry you're going through this, but I know now from what we just got to just asking certain questions that you wouldn't really be able to make this commitment. So yeah, just definitely going with your gut. Like, this is all people and humanistic, and we feel, when we feel something, we can ask that question. And then also too, you have a guideline on legal parameters, so don't ask certain things. Like, you can't ask, well, how old are you? Like, you can't ask certain things. But just when it comes to how you're structuring questions, you can have that guide, but also just know how to have that conversation, make it a conversation in the interview, so that they're giving you information before they're thinking about it.
Yeah, and I know in alignment with your process around sort of vetting people for a week as they volunteer and kind of seeing how they interact, and getting young people's perspective as well on how those adults did. I know that Janine has shared with me times that the first 3 months were great, kind of like honeymoon period, and then there was a mistake made or something didn't go well, and you really see, oh, okay, this is how this person reacts and responds in a situation like that. So yeah, I think it's really courageous to ask folks to do that much that 1 week. I'm also wondering, Shanice, if you'd be willing to share with us when we think about retaining people. One of the things Janine has said to me before is compassion fatigue is real. Like, I put it on here because it really is. And we want to be able to address burnout. I know you're both doing things. Shanice, you all are doing some cool stuff around time off and how much time they have to take that time off, and also celebrating. Would you be willing to share some of that?
Yes. So I love compassion fatigue. That is definitely a quote you need to coin. So just talking about our staff in general and retaining staff, like even when we were saying you can have like 3 months in and someone reacts to a different, because people aren't going to fully show you in a week anyway. You just try to get a good of a feel as you can. But also, when we do make that commitment and decide to bring someone on, we invest in them fully. So the moment that they're in our program, if they don't fit in the area, we try to retrain them for other areas. So even if you came in as a case manager, we don't want to lose you. We want to make sure that you know you're valued here. So that's first and foremost, making our employees feel valued. That's important. And that's why personal relationships are important to us, because I spend most of my time with my coworkers and not my family. So I have to like my coworkers, and I know some people are like, you don't have to like them, but I personally do, because that helps the work environment go better. When we're all comfortable, when we're all working together, when we're all acting as a family, when we all understand the mission and the vision, we want to aid in the mission and the vision, and we all take it personal, and we're all on the same page. So something, making sure that all of our staff members feel valued no matter what position and what they do, that we're all on the same page, the same job that any staff member of mine does, I can do, will do, and have done. Down to before I ask my staff member to clean a bathroom because our janitor called out, I'll clean it and I'll let them do their job. So understanding that we have this relationship, and I may be a superior, but I value you and I'm willing to get down and dirty the same way you get down and dirty. And then I also know your struggle and I respect your struggle. So we do have like competitive PTO. All of our part-time staff get 4 hours every paycheck, and all of our full-time staff get 8 hours every paycheck, and they can use it. However, I've literally had to train my staff to call out, like just because they like, I feel like I can't call out, we got this going on, we got this going on. I'm like, it will get handled. Call out. If you're not at your best, then I could lose you in a different way, and I don't want that. I don't want you to get burned out. So we train it in their head to call out. This is not an environment where you're afraid to call out. If you need it, I trust you to let us know when you need it. So if you need it, and we don't have excessive call outs. So we Or like, so I love that about our team. Even down to like right now, we had a funder who allowed 2 of us to go on a wellness retreat. We begged them so that 5 of us can go. We like, we no. These there have been, and then our older and we made sure that our executive team wouldn't go and our staff could go. So they can get everything paid for and they can take advantage of that. We go bowling together. We have mental health therapy together. We did groups. So we did groups and we are also eligible to individual services. And we had to hash things out in some of these groups. Like it was literally like a family group therapy. But we made sure it was an objective person there that helped facilitate and make sure everyone had a voice. So we want to make sure that we wanted to work out here with us here on the staff. So the same thing that we're doing for the young people, half our staff need it. So we make sure that every resource, everything we're giving out, our staff has the options to receive that as well. We give out food packages and don't even know that half of our staff might be facing a few food insecurity. So we make sure that there's an open door policy, and they can tell us, my boss has paid staff's bills out of his own personal pocket to make sure, because they might have needed in advance. It's literally a family environment. We have open door policies and it's trust, how we were talking about before. So because we're dealing with the kids and we all have that synergy, we know exactly what kid did this, how it made us feel, and we can empathize so well with how we're all going through it. So we are actually the best people to vent to as well. So we got to make sure that we have that space. We have a tap out program. Well, not a program, but if whenever we see somebody, we know that if somebody taps you out, or if they see that you getting agitated, because we don't yell at our kids, we don't go back and forth with our kids, we don't argue. If anybody is being combative and they're not handling a situation, we're all there to support them. So, but yeah, we just got a lot of things that we put in place to make sure that we're addressing things before they happen. We're all about preventative, like early intervention and prevention. If we can stop it before it gets to a point, I don't want to lose any of my staff members. So I will rather invest and build on them and make this something that they can grow in and keep learning, and I can align with their career goals. Like we had an intern who did well in our program. So now we offered her a job, and now she's getting her certification in occupational therapy. And then we're now trying to find grants that will pay for a healthcare professional at our site so that we can now ensure a salary at what she desires and what she went to school for.
Yeah, I know y'all are doing so much in this area. And the part about where you, as the executive leadership team, are sharing so much power with your staff, and I think like acknowledging that difference in power and doing things to neutralize it in ways or share that power with. I think that I've seen, leadership teams on nonprofits and mentoring programs who are afraid that they have a lot of staff and they're afraid they'll take advantage if they give a lot of, power or time off or things like that. And to me, it sounds like in your experience, people are not excessively calling out. They're not no one's taking advantage of it. They're using it as they need it. And then just the last thing on this, I know both of your programs are also use a lot of humor, use levity. I know, Janine, you had shared with me that you all sometimes when like the kids go and are gone, y'all will order some food, watch a movie, maybe have some beers. Do you have one or two things that y'all do to address that burnout, compassion fatigue?
Shanice, thank you. You said everything that I was thinking. Because when you get good people, you want to keep them, and you do become a family, right? Everybody starts to, because what's key is that the folks that you work with, they have to have some kind of buy-in, and it's not about a paycheck, right? When we work with folks, especially new folks, I'm always like, well, why do you want to do this type of work? Because it's not easy. Like, again, we're in the arts, we're in film and filmmaking. Some of us could have packed our bags and went to Hollywood, but what's keeping you here in Philadelphia, wanting to be in the communities and wanting to work with the kids? And everybody had various reasons. But at the core of it, it's because they want to pour into these kids, and that is what lifts them up. But pouring into people can deplete you. I've been depleted all week long. I'll be honest. I was like, listen, I've been so depleted. I went to bed early yesterday. People were mowing their lawns. I'm in the bed. I need to lay down for a second. So when my staff and I get together, when the kids are gone, I spend thousands of dollars during the year buying food. And Shanice, similarly to you, and thank God that the funders are getting it. So we've been invited to a lot of wellness retreats. They've given us wellness grants where I asked the staff, I'm like, do you guys want to do something? Do you want to purchase something? What do you prefer to do with this money? And they all said cash. So I ended up giving everybody almost like a Christmas bonus because they took that grant and they wanted to use it for what they wanted to use it for. But I have no problem with making sure the team, we're eating, we go to the movies together. We've been to events together. And our favorite thing to do is to go up the street and get some beer, put on something on Netflix, because we have a huge atrium with a big screen and everything. And we'll sit there and eat and laugh until everybody's too tired and then go home. So that's the thing that, and everyone enjoy it. We enjoy each other's company. Like we have the best time hanging out with each other. And that is a relationship that we had to learn how to cultivate. Maya Angelou, and I was telling Adelaide about this, and I don't have the quote, but she just said something along the lines of, what happens is people get older, but they don't grow up. And there's a difference between growing up and getting older. So I love to be around people who are grown. Like there's social, emotional, like maturity that's there. Because the last thing I want to do is bring a person on my team who's another kid. Like I already got a bunch of teenagers driving me crazy. I don't want to add to the group. You want somebody that has a sense of self and they hold themselves accountable. And like the tapping out thing, I love that. Tell us that you might need a break and it's okay. Like I don't sit around and make you, count your hours. I need you to be well when you're here because this is a lot of work and I'm Black. Oh, listen, we got to stick together on this one. So I might need to tap out, and I have tapped out. My team's like, don't worry, we got it. So that's the kind of like the environment you want when it comes to your team.
Yeah. And Shanice, when you brought up that policy or that sort of mechanism y'all have around tapping out, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you all like formally assign people to each other as like, this is your safety person, this is your safety person. Is that right?
Yeah, we've done that before. Like we've identified, like we've had that talk. Like, listen, my person is Miss Anye, who happens to be my best friend. I love getting to be able to work with my best friend. But she knows me. Like she knows how to push me. She knows when I'm like, she can see something in my face and everything like that. If I'm like getting flustered or something. So she's like my tap out person. But because our entire job has just gotten close. And typically the person who will tap you out is the person who you are closest with at the job, like that relationship with, because they know you best. But now we're all like close enough to help one another. Like I've like let me talk to this parent real quick, and I like redirect. Or we've had huge community events where we've had like parents upset because they stood in the line long, and I see my coworker like sweat and pouring sweat because I know they've had this conversation 22 times already with the parents standing in line. So I'm like, let me talk to them real quick. I got you, bro. Can you like help with this? And then so we'll do that. We've all been comfortable with allowing all of us to intervene, and just like tap us out. Like even with Mr. Rick, I'm like, I got it. Like just because I'm like, I need you to just go get on stage and talk and get some money. Like let us deal with this. Like, but we're all like super comfortable and know when to pull someone from a situation before it becomes a situation.
Yeah, thank you. Y'all are doing so much in this area that I think we all can learn from. I think we have a couple more minutes for our last topic here. Jake, if you want to go to the next slide on recruiting. And so I just want to say, like from the top about recruiting, I know when we work with mentoring programs locally or even sometimes nationally, and when I talk with other mentor affiliates across the country, recruitment is one thing that almost everybody struggles with. I just want to normalize that the recruitment struggles, right? Whether it's recruiting young people from your program or volunteers and staff, a lot of programs struggle with this, and it's normal and and real. I do also think that if we are doing the other things that you all talked about, building relationships with our partners in our community, doing the work to retain our staff, all of those things will help with recruitment. it makes recruitment a lot easier when we're intentionally and carefully building those partnerships, ensuring that we have a high quality program and we've got the right people on the bus, as Jim Collins would say. Programs tend to find that their young people, their volunteers and staff come to them wanting to be a part of their program, and there's less effort and resources required of us to recruit young folks. That being said, there are some things I think that Janine and Shanice are doing at NOMO and Little Filmmakers that I've kind of tried to highlight here on this staff, whether it's through word of mouth. Maybe one of you all would be willing to talk about, Janine, would you be willing to talk about your internship program?
Yeah, so our internship program is, I would describe it as competitive because we are intentionally investing in young people who are on the career path. So when we're looking for interns, we're looking for kids that we are going to invest a lot of time, energy, and money into. And these are more than likely kids who are going to go work with some of our partners and get paid for their work. So that's where the partnership is really important, because they are kid-friendly partners. So they know that you might get a 22-year-old who might be a little goofy, but they got the best intentions and they're trying. So with our internship program, we put them through an interview process, like with any job. Our internship is paid. My staff and I give them a few different rounds of interviews. So they'll interview with my staff, and then if they do well, then they'll talk with me. We do have really deep conversations about what challenges that you feel like you're dealing with, because part of the challenge for our kids is that, again, a lot of these kids are coming from disenfranchised communities. They're coming from some trauma in their life. And a lot of these kids have the poverty mindset, which is I got to survive now. And they're not actually thinking about thriving. So a lot of this is thinking about how do we ensure that we bring in the right kids that will be able to complete the program, as opposed to casting a wide net just to get a bunch of kids in. So our programs, we don't go wide, we go deep. So that is also reflected in our recruitment process. And from there, once we realize this kid may be ready and they got a decent portfolio and they're open to learn, they're excited about it, then we invite them to the program, because we know that kid will probably continue to work hard after the internship has completed. So for our kids who are just more interested in trying to get to know this filmmaking world and trying to figure out what their interests are, is a little bit different. That program, we cast a wide net. We bring everybody in to see what they're interested in, and they might be interested in an experience, or they might want something deeper. So those programs are designed for folks who just have a general interest.
Yeah. And I had there was a question in chat about the question there's a question on the slide. Anyone know a braiding shop with a licensed stylist willing to take an intern and free help in exchange for knowledge? Someone in the chat was wondering why we were asking that. And I put it up there as an example from how NOMO uses social media to recruit. And then I also just want to touch on the last bullet point here. I could not leave this out. Janine, this is from Janine, intentionally and unapologetically hiring Black men filmmakers, which to me, that's a very specific thing, right? But to me, that represents how Janine is intentionally and unapologetically recruiting volunteers and staff who can meet the needs of the young people in her program. So really, they're young people that you want to engage, right? Really looking to intentionally, and I love unapologetically, looking to meet their needs. Jake, I'm wondering if I know we have some next steps to share and some resources. I'm wondering if we have time for any questions, or if there's any questions in the chat we missed.
I think you all honestly answered and addressed most of the questions that I've been seeing. There is one that I think was a really cool question that I think anybody here could probably speak to, but just with all of the talk that you're all sharing about how you're not just supporting the young people in your programs, but also supporting your staff and volunteers. The question was, this person is training a new employee who is struggling to trust her gut. Do you have any advice on how to build her up within the agency? And whoever feels like that resonates with them can kick us off with that one.
So I'm currently going through that a lot, just because That could be difficult because sometimes when you're dealing with multiple sites, things might happen that you don't see. So you have to trust your staff to be able to tell you that, to communicate it, or to stand and address that situation in that environment. And people are not always comfortable. And we know that there's hostile work environments. There's things where people have their own things why they might not feel comfortable addressing something like that, but it still remains the fact that you need it to be addressed, or you need them to be comfortable with telling you, because we when someone reports to something, or when someone says something, or when someone has to engage, they have to do it. It can't not be addressed. So honestly, we have a lot of meetings about it, like personal meetings, like where I'm encouraging that person and I'm placing them in small situations that lead up to this. So say I have a person who is afraid to administer discipline to a child, right? They don't want, this is like a light incident or a light activity. Then I'll have situations where I'm like, hey, such and such came in late today. Can you have a talk with them? Like, so that it's not a write up yet, but let's start getting you comfortable and let you see it. And we first show them how it's done too. So I'm not going to say, hey, you got to address a partner when they're having a certain tone with a child. I'm not there. So our kids need to know that you will defend them in all of our absence. So it might say, all right, sitting on this meeting while we have a conversation with the partner first, and you see how I do it. And then from there, I need you to start practicing that as well. You can just say, hey, can we be mindful of our tone? Take baby steps. I know we're talking about baby steps. We don't want to throw people into the fire. That's not something we want to do. And she's having that reservations, and it can be for a number of different reasons. She can have her own trauma where she tried to stand on something before, or tried to stand up for someone, and all hell broke loose. So we want to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for her to trust her gut, and that if she fails, then she's still supported, because we want to make sure that we can replicate it, find out what's wrong, and make sure that we aim for success. So definitely having conversations, provide the example, and start off in baby steps.
I love that. I love that. I love this this metaphor of the dating, the baby steps. I think that's such a good one that you brought up, Janine, earlier. Janine, anything to add to that, or any other ideas around
Yep.
that question? It was someone struggling to trust their gut. Any advice on building her up?
Yeah. And I often talk to my team because, again, like, it's important, it's essential for people to feel like that they have agency and they can handle it. But trusting your gut is understanding that you know more than you feel like you know. And you're trusting your gut is trusting yourself. And outside of modeling it, because there's been times where my staff was terrified of just either making decisions or just showing up in the way of leadership. There was one time my staff member was going back and forth with one of my parents, and the parent's a bit of a helicopter mom. And then the parent came to the office, and my staff ran into my office and damn near dove behind my chair. I'm like, what is happening? So what I had to do was go outside and model how you would handle a parent like that. So it's just, and I wasn't upset with her, but we did have a conversation about, in the event this happened again, how would you approach it? What makes you feel grounded in this and supported in this process? There was something else that you said that I wanted to say, but I don't remember what it was. But I think at the end of the day, as long as the staff member feels supported, and baby steps are absolutely key. Don't throw them, into the deep end of the pool. Just kind of see how they do it. Let them build up to it. Because one of the things I do when we're recruiting, and full disclosure, we're hiring for a education coordinator, and Shanice had did the first round of interviews for us. So that was heavy lifting. So she's good. So I was like, listen, can you talk to these people? Because I hate interviewing people. But one of the things we talk about is, are you comfortable with agency? You cannot hide in this job. You're working with kids, you're working with communities, you're working with parents and families. I'm not going to be here all the time. You can't call me every time there's a fire. You have to step in and figure out how to problem solve. So that's that 90-day mark. I give them about 3 months to see how they fail and how they respond to their failure. Do they step up, or do they point? I had a staff member blame one of my teenagers because something went wrong. She had to go. So it takes time, but the nurturing helps. And then after a certain benchmark, a certain amount of time, if that person still doesn't seem to get it, that might not be a good position for them.
Great. Thank you. I love that question. Are you comfortable with agency? That's a really, really amazing question. So we're in our last couple minutes here. So I do want to, we kind of address those throughout. Adelaide, anything that you want to highlight here for these 3 next steps for folks?
Yeah, this really came out of Janine's learning about collecting data and how she made, when she was telling me about the data collection she's doing, it sounded so like accessible and doable, you know, using Google Forms, not having to use SurveyMonkey, and how important it is, I know at NOMO too, around ensuring program quality. And when I asked them for something, what's something that our program participants can go and do like right now or tomorrow? And, you know, it was around learning how to collect data, surveying program participants about their needs, what they need, so we can actually be responsive to them in our program. I saw lots in the chat about conducting regular check-ins with our program participants. And then Janine also highlighted asking testimonials from your young people. It says about, I guess I left that off, but about the work you're doing with them, about their experience in your program. And then you let them, you know, record them on camera or with a phone, or have them fill it out in a Google form. These are tips from Janine and Shanice. And then we have a couple resources to share with folks on the next slide. Catch a Fire website connects professional volunteers and other nonprofits based on skills. These are all resources that our panelists have used. Candid's Foundation Directory offers professional development and resource development. And then Shanice wants everyone to use your local library. Here in Philly, we have the BRIC, which is the Business Resource and Innovation Center, but with lots of funding opportunities, learn about other organizations. It's where Mackenzie Scott found some of her grantees. So use your local community resources as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And a huge thank you to Shanice, Adelaide, and Janine. What an incredible conversation. I was sitting here taking notes. This was really amazing and just speaks to all of the incredible work that you're all doing, the thoughtful and intentional work that you're doing. And thank you so much for your stories, your experiences, and then of course, all of the ideas. I hope you were checking out the chat. You got a lot of love in the chat, a lot of emoji reactions throughout. And I'll make sure to send the chat along to you all as well to everybody in the audience. Very quickly, here are some additional resources. Stay in touch with us. All of these things can be found on our website. We have amazing mentor affiliates. Again, Adelaide is part of one of them, Mentor Independence Region, that can provide some more local support to you. And we also have the National Mentoring Resource Center that you can apply for no-cost technical assistance at. Please take 3 to 4 minutes to complete the survey that'll pop up on your screen. It's anonymous. Let us know how we did, what we can improve upon. And I'll make sure that all of the slides, the recording, the resources, and the chat, because you all shared so many amazing ideas in the chat, is uploaded to our website as well, and you'll get a notification about that. But thank you all again in the audience so much for all of the engagement that you did today. So many great resources, ideas, and stories in the chat as well. Again, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. Join us next month for Wellness and Resilience and Mentoring Part 3. Again, this link is on our website, but huge thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everybody for being here, and hope you all have a wonderful day. So, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.